Perhaps one of the most humbling career paths that I've ever been exposed to is that of being a lecturer. And this is strictly because the more I teach, the more I understand how much I don't know. But most importantly, you can pour your heart, mind, body, and soul into a 3-hour lecture. And a student can still come back to you after the lecture and say, I literally have no idea what's going on. And this has allowed me to understand that students also say this if they're feeling overwhelmed or if they're panicking. And so, which brings me to my first insight. Silence is deadly. As a marketer, I've come to understand the notion of embracing the bad news, learning to speak up, even if there is a storm in the room. And this is because the current consumer that we are faced with is belief-driven. They want brands to actively solve problems through communicating, just like my students. So withholding the bad news is detrimental to our brands. Now, on the topic of communication, we cannot leave authenticity. And I recall having an engagement with the students of mine about authenticity. And they said, it's called pop culture sandwich, ma'am. The ability to sandwich, or rather deliver your content with relevance and authenticity. Which brings me to insight number 2. Attention is currency. Our consumer is exposed to marketing fatigue. They are highly overwhelmed by the number of messages that they get every single day. So the real challenge for me as a marketer has been to take the quality of information that I have and curate it into something that has relevance. And whenever I ask my students, what do you think this brand did differently? Or what do you think is different about this brand? And in true Gen Z style, they'll say, it's giving dominate. Right? The ability to step up and stand out. Which, of course, then brings me to insight number 3, main character energy. Taking up space can only make sense if we understand the construct of that space, and also understanding the path to domination. Is it well expressed in our teams? Most importantly, is it well expressed within the context of ourselves? We can't get to domination without having tough conversations with each other. We need to be brave and look at each other in the eye and say, I don't think I get it, just like my students. So for me, the lecture room is a melting pot for various cultures, insights, wisdom, value. And so this, of course, then leads me to my 4th insight with all of these colorful characters in the room. Be clear, not clever. Marketing is a language. And if we don't understand it with each other, it can cause language barriers and conflict. So we actively represent our consumer in the boardroom where decisions are made. If we can't speak their language there, how do we expect to speak it on platforms that they actively own? A common question that I get asked, can I get an extension, please? Right, yeah? I'm sure you also asked this question. And what has it taught me? It's taught me that students love the work that they are going to submit. They want to be proud. And so this leads me to insight number 5. Completion doesn't imply finality. In a deadline-driven industry, we need to understand the power of pivot and how refreshing and beautiful that can be to us as marketers. So the challenge is to remain flexible. And of course, as a marketer, my DNA is to not necessarily conform, but to make sure that if the situation arises, I'm able to pivot and be flexible. Most importantly, how much flexibility are we allowing within the context of our marketing teams, and most importantly, in the context of within ourselves? So my students, whenever they are actively stalking me on LinkedIn, as they will ask me a question such as, what's your story, ma'am? And I generally know that this question comes from students who are actually quite intrigued about the process of what I'm doing in my life. They want to know more, which leads me to insight number 6. Stand on business. The ability to say what you say and do what you do must not be underestimated as a marketer. It's rich to have that and to be able to be authentic and have power in what you're doing. There's also a common danger in marketing where we think that consumers will actually believe our brand story at face value. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that anymore. Our consumer will stalk and stalk and stalk until they are assured that the version that you're presenting is the real version of you. And of course, we all know students generally love winging it. So they will say, I'm just going to wing it for an assessment. And it's made me think to myself, yes, this could work for them, but does it work for me as a marketer, as someone who is an author of bringing brands to the respective consumer? How far can I go in winging it? And then, of course, the most important question and the insight that I'm going to be speaking about, number 7, is Delulu really the Solulu, right? Delulu, for those of you that don't know, delusional, Solulu, solution, typical Gen Z language. So there is a positive reinforcement through delusional thinking, which as marketers, when we actively believe that the products and brands we bring into the market is power. And then there's also a negative thinking that is central about delusion. And this is when we assume that the marketer thinks like us. We think that we as marketers are the target audience. And we don't actively ask questions that might actually help us in not crafting the wrong messages on social media. So we're simply not the audience, and the challenge is to actually stay away from this frame of thinking. Another thing is we can't be delusional about facts. The younger generation is absolutely obsessed about the following fact, that everyone at the table should get a piece of cake. So this, of course, then brings me to the most important topic that we've heard during the course of today, inclusivity, period. Okay? So the younger generation is absolutely aware that at some point exclusion was orchestrated. And if that is the case, inclusion can then be embedded deliberately in our marketing strategies. It can't look forced either, because that shouldn't be the case for our brands. AI has officially entered the chat, big topic today, and a common complaint that I get is, okay, but is ChatGPT that bad though? And of course, it's a common problem within academia. But fast forward, what has it taught me about being a marketer? ChatGPT, frenemy. Insight number 9. Students are of the opinion that AI is rather an enabler, but it's not actually the final product. And so, as a marketer, my job is to A, start understanding how I can use it to my benefit in an ethical manner, but most importantly, leave an element of humanness for the brand, which still is a bit of a challenge for someone like me, who is a bit of a millennial and is quite traditional. And then, of course, my biggest value is providing value, rather, to the actual students. If my lecture room is not a lecture room that is full of power and knowledge, I will get this question: why are we here? And it's a common question, but it's also a triggering question, because that means that the students in the room actually want to get value. So, which leads me to number 10, sell the experience. The experience economy has become a valuable part of marketing, and the marketing of experiences holds greater value than the marketing of actual products and services. Consumers actually want to compare experiences with each other. So if we as marketers can get to a level of being able to offer our consumers richer experiences of our brands, we would have reached the zenith of our heights. And lastly, we can only be marketers when we allow challenge to step into the room. So you're appointed, and you're anointed, but you gotta allow challenge to be a part of it. Thank you.